Underfunding problems. The MTA has been known for being underfunded, since it is a state agency that the state of New York itself uses for gaining money. There's not a lot to say since it's pretty self-explanatory. Cleaning problems. The NYC subway has been known for being pretty dirty and having rats everywhere. Not much else to say. New technology trains, or NTTs. This entry is referring to the new stainless steel trains that have the red sign on the top of the train. There are multiple models currently running, such as the first NTT, the R142, R143, the R160, R188, and the R179. Soon the R211 will come into service and will be the first train to have open gangways. The 2nd Avenue Subway. This is referring to the newly opened 2nd Avenue Subway, with a queue serving up until 96th Street. The plan is split into 4 phases, with Phase 2 constructing an extension to 125th Street, Phase 3 consists of it running down Lower Manhattan, and Phase 4 is ending the line down at Hanover Square. Abandoned City Hall Loop. The City Hall Loop was part of the original 28 stops that formed the first subway. This was the terminus of Lexington Avenue line trains, specifically the 6 train. After 1945, the station was abandoned for its sharp curve and the fact that not all the train cars could fit in. It can still be viewed by taking a tour of the place with a guide or riding a train beyond Brooklyn Bridge City Hall. Foamers. These people usually basically get excited when an oddity in the subway system pops up, like an R32J train or an R62 6 train. Sometimes they can get out of hand and screw over service. Conquestors. These people basically vandalize and steal subway equipment, such as breaking into cabs, stealing roll signs, and even hijacking a train. Rail fans. These are people who film the subway and appreciate it, and as you can tell, I am one of these rail fans. Otherwise, why would I be doing this iceberg? Bullets. These are used to designate each service that the subway system operates. The colors are also used to distinguish what main trunk line the service serves. For example, the 1, 2, and 3 all have red because they all serve the 7th Avenue trunk line. The lettered lines are used to distinguish IND/BMT services, which have trains that are larger than the numbered lines, which are known as the IRT. Holiday Train. The Holiday Train is a series of old R109 cars that run a special service during the holidays. Other old equipment is used as well sometimes, although if it is a holiday train that ends at 2nd Avenue, it is in fact a V train. The shuttles. There are 3 shuttles in New York. One is a point A to point B type of line along 42nd Street, one that is in the middle of Brooklyn that goes from Prospect Park to Franklin Avenue, and one that operates from Beach 116th Street to Broad Channel. MetroCard/Omni. The MetroCard was introduced in the 90s as a way to replace tokens which were previously used. The card was used to make traveling on the subway a lot easier. Later, the Omni system came in, and now you can pay with your phone. CBTC/ATO. Basically, it's the trains driving themselves, which would allow for more trains to be run per hour. Of course, when it was installed on the L train, people started to freak out, fearing that it would replace the operator. All the NTTs are equipped with CBTC except for the R142s and the R179s, apparently. The train of many colors. This refers to a mix of various old IRT equipment being used for a special trip. The consist is a lot of Redbird type cars like the R33, the R27, and the R36, and probably a few that I forgot to mention. SMEs. These subway rolling stock were made in the 20th century and currently includes the R46, R62, and the R68. The R110A and the R110B also technically count as well. There are also older rolling stock such as the R33/R36, the R40, the R42, the R44, and especially the R32. The train of many metals. The train of many metals consists of IND/BMT rolling stock that were once used for the NYC subway. Pretty much all the old cars of the BMT/IND lines all put together for a special trip. Mosaics. There are a lot of old mosaic art made when the subway was first built. Not much else to say on this layer of the iceberg. 2010 budget cuts. The budget cuts of 2010 refer to the elimination of certain services and in one case, merging 2 services together. The brown M train and the V were combined to form the orange M train, while the W was canned until the 2nd Avenue subway opened. Christie Street connection. Basically, this connection allowed a bunch of trains from Manhattan to enter Brooklyn and the extended J and Z down to the Lower East Side. Basically, that whole spaghetti bowl of subway trains you see in the Lower Manhattan with the B, D, and Q crossing over the Manhattan Bridge and the J, Z, and M crossing over the Williamsburg Bridge. That whole, spaghetti bowl basically that connects, all these trains to different bridges across Brooklyn and other places. That's basically the Christie Street connection. Transit Tech High School. Basically, it's a school that helps students to find work in the electrical field, including work in the NYC subway. Not much else to say. Pelham 123. I've never seen the film, but it's basically about a guy who stole a 6 train and started to kill people every 10 minutes or so. So it's basically a film about your average commute in the NYC subway. The Transit Museum. Basically a place where a large portion of NYC subway history is. You could buy a lot of souvenirs and learn a lot about how the subway works and how it was built. The Essex Street Trams. If you've ever seen the Essex Street station on the JM and Z, you'll notice a large abandoned area right next to the station. Well, this used to be a terminal for the trams that ran over the Williamsburg Bridge. They were abandoned when the cars started to take over our streets. IRT, BMT, and IND. These are basically the 3 companies that formed the subway system we now have today. The IRT was the first, and then the BRT eventually became the BMT. Finally, the IND made a new subway system to compete with the BMT. Around the 50s, all the companies came together and now formed the current system we have now. Chambers Street platforms. The J and Z station is notable for its decaying look and for its huge size. But you're probably going to ask, well, why is it so big? Basically, Broadway line trains were supposed to run through here and go down to where the R basically is right now and where it currently runs. However, the Christie Street connection was constructed and this rendered the J and Z station obsolete. Bus/train concepts. There have been a lot of train and bus concepts over the years. The most notable is the R211 concept design. Andy Byford. Basically, he's worked on the London Underground and the TTC, and now currently works on improving the mess that is the New York City subway. Not much else. Mass Transitscope. Basically, a moving art piece that is in one of the tunnels of the New York City subway. Myrtle upper level. Basically, this upper level used to serve the MJ line, which ran to downtown Brooklyn via the Myrtle Avenue L that used to basically be on Myrtle Avenue. It used to go down to, I think, downtown Brooklyn and then over the Brooklyn Bridge, according to the map at least, that was supplied to me, or that I basically looked up on Google. Anyways, basically, the L the MJ ran on was demolished and the upper levels left abandoned. They, for some reason, haven't taken on the upper level, I guess for historic reasons. I have no idea. TikTok cereal incident. Basically, this troglodyte thought it would be a great idea to dump milk and cereal on a subway train during the pandemic. He is, of course, a TikTok user and filmed the entire thing. I honestly feel bad for the person who had to clean this up. Reason why 125th Street is elevated. Basically, the hilly terrain didn't allow for this part of the line to be underground, and instead basically made a viaduct to basically keep the same elevation as the underground section. 76th Street Station. This station was rumored to exist beyond Euclid Avenue, and was believed to be a planned extension of the A train up Pitkin Avenue. However, the existing Fulton L was taken over by the IND and formed into what we have today. But there have been many conspiracies about this station, including the fact that it was covered up because unions would get involved. But you'll have to wait for the last layer of the iceberg for my explanation of 76th Street. Or rather, the reason why it probably exists. Anyways, Euclid Avenue Shuttle. The A on the overnights only has one terminal, that being Far Rockaway, with the Rockaway Park service having already the existing shuttle that serves it. But not a lot of people know about the shuttle that goes to Lefferts Boulevard, that starts at Euclid Avenue and goes up until Lefferts Boulevard. That's basically a nighttime service when the A train is not serving Lefferts Boulevard. Neglected stations. The NYC subway is massive and some stations are neglected in the process. Most of these stations are found on the Nassau Street line, most notably Chambers Street. There are probably other stations that are dilapidated around the system, but most are on the Nassau Street line. Dean Street Station. Dean Street was a station located on the Franklin Avenue shuttle. It was an elevated station that was demolished because fare evaders used it to ride the subway for free, since Dean Street didn't have any place to pay for using the subway, for some reason. 2017 Times Square bombing. Basically, somebody detonated a pipe bomb on one of the passageways, and the perpetrator was arrested. Only 3 people were injured in this, and this attack was in response to the U.S. response to the Israeli-Gaza conflict, or whatever the hell that conflict was. It's still going on, by the way. Anyways, the 9 train. The 9 train ran with the 1 in a skip-stop pattern along where the 1 was alone. Since there were no express tracks that could be used properly, eventually the 9 died in 2005 because skip-stop service sucks. Everybody knows this by now. I mean, the Z train is a perfect example of why you should not use skip-stop service. But anyways, the 8 train. The 8 train was basically the 3rd Avenue L and used to run down to Battery Park. However, because people started complaining about the L's making noises, the line was completely demolished, only leaving the Bronx section open up until 1972, where the last section was terminated. Before the demolition of the Bronx part, on maps the 3rd Avenue L was referred to as the 8 train. R11/R34 subway cars. In anticipation for the 2nd Avenue subway, the R11 was built to specifically serve the 2nd Avenue line. Later, it got changed to the R34, but since the line was never made, the cars were sent elsewhere. I have no idea as to what happened with the cars after 1976 or something like that. I really don't know. Anyways, state-of-the-art cars. The state-of-the-art cars were subway models that were commissioned by the Department of Transport, the U.S. Department of Transport, and were completed and sent to various transit systems around America, including New York City. These cars ran on between May 17th to July 19th. One of these cars ran on the D, which used to be my home line. 191st Street Tunnel. 191st Street is the deepest train platform in the New York City subway system. To get to the platform, you have to walk down a long tunnel which has graffiti and dim lighting. A lot of people hate this tunnel because of the reasons I just mentioned. The MTA did try to fix this issue with installing art and improving the lighting, however people messed it up again and has once again been reduced to a crappy tunnel, with sewage on the walls. Yeah. Anyways, Grand Central Tennis Court. A tennis court exists on the 4th floor at Grand Central Station. There's not much else. It's not all that secret. They literally have a website, I think. I'm not too sure about that. But it's pretty, it's pretty easy to access if you know where to go. 7 Super Express. When the Mets play at Citi Field, the 7 Super Express comes out and only makes stops with transfers. When the game is done, it goes Super Express into Manhattan and same vice versa. Demolished Elevateds. There were a lot of elevated systems in New York City, including the L's that ran through Manhattan. However, people got sick and tired of the noise and the city tore them down, only to realize the mess of traffic and pollution they have created in the process. The former elevated lines were the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 9th Avenue L's, as well as the northern portion of the Jamaica L. There are probably a lot more L's out there, but there are so many to list that I'm only going to list these, because I think we'd be here all day if I listed all the L's. And plus, I think we should get to our next entry. The Grand Street Shuttle. Basically, when the Manhattan Bridge was being worked on, this shuttle came out to serve areas affected by the B and D rerouting. It was retired in 2004. 12-9/track fires. People really like to push people. People love to push other people onto oncoming trains for some reason, and others love to start track fires. Why? We still don't know. Anyways, the 1991 Union Square wreck. Long story short, on August 27th through the 28th, an operator driving a forward train was drunk beyond belief and overshot several stops along the line. After making it down the Lexington Avenue line, somehow not crashing, the driver was speeding up to 50 miles an hour heading into 14th Street. However, the train was only supposed to go around 10 miles an hour because it was rerouted onto a pocket track due to maintenance on the subway line. The train crashed into the pocket track, mangling several cars and injuring many in the process. NYPD and fire rescue came into the scene and rescued 211 passengers, with 161 people being injured and 5 people being killed. The train operator was sentenced to 15 years in prison, however, he was released in 2002. This has caused the MTA to do regular testing for its employees. Churros on the L train. I think this is referring to the churros lady who was selling churros illegally, and then another woman who was also arrested. I'm not too sure if this is the case. I'm not too sure if it was even on an L train, but I mean, I guess there was not a lot really useful information that I found for this entry, so Whatever. Malbone Street Wreck. Basically, a Franklin Avenue shuttle train slammed into a wall at a high speed, killing 93 people in total. This was all back in the late 1800s to early 1900s. The predecessor to the BMT, the BRT, suffered heavily because of this. The R179K roll sign. As shown by a video of DJ Hammers, there is a program for the K train on an R179. This has probably caused a lot of confusion. It's entirely possible that they just imported old programming from older tech like the R46 or the R68 in order, and they just implanted it in the R179. I mean, it's entirely possible. Otherwise, why would there be a K roll sign? Unless it's probably some sort of... Because the K train is basically just the C via the E line. So there's really no point in having the K roll sign there unless they plan to bring it back, which is entirely possible. It's not impossible, but I don't see a reason for it. Anyways, I'm blabbering on too much. It's been 16 minutes already. Hurricane flooding. Hurricane Sandy flooded the lower Manhattan and it caused disruptions across the system, most notably delaying the opening of the new South Ferry station. There was a slew of other changes, including suspension of E-service, suspension of Rockaway service, which caused the H to come back from the dead, and also caused the Metro North to have free service. MTA Cops episode. Basically, this episode of Cops takes place before the New York Transit, before the Transit Police merged with the NYPD. The Bowling Green shuttle. There was a shuttle on a now closed off portion of the Bowling Green station that would have traveled down to the South Ferry inner loop. It eventually closed due to both the inner loop closing and the service being seen as redundant. South Ferry Loop. Before the new South Ferry station opened, the South Ferry Loop existed. It had a very curved platform like that of the abandoned City Hall station. This loop was in service until 2017 when the new South Ferry station reopened because of the damage from Hurricane Sandy. The curved nature of the platforms caused only the first 5 cars to fit in the station. The loop also had gap fillers which were also used for the 14th Street Union Square station on the 6th train platform. Siemens R143. The R143 Siemens was a test train to see how a Siemens R160 propulsion would work. They retrofitted an 8-car R43 for this occasion. I think the test train still exists. The Court Square Shuttle. There was a shuttle called the HH, the double H, that ran from Hoyt-Schermerhorn to Court Street. If you ever looked at Hoyt-Schermerhorn Street Station and noticed an abandoned platform, that's where the shuttle used to start and terminate. Meanwhile, the Court Street Station is now the NYC Transit Museum. Yes, that station that doesn't really look like a station, located within the museum, is actually a station. Go figure. Trains being able to go on the L train at Broadway Junction. There's trackage that exists for other lines to go on the L train. The whole web of tracks that exist beyond Broadway Junction allows, I think, J trains to go on the L train line if there's any problems and vice versa. September 20th incident. Basically, somebody put a large piece of metal on the tracks and that caused a R46A train to derail at 14th Street. The person was later arrested and apparently this guy was from the Bronx. And to be honest, that's not surprising at all.